During the field classes of this section, I'm going to show you a very important skill that you want to probably domain in order to be able to know the errors, identify the errors, and eventually debug them to identify the position and possible solutions. So, during this specific class, I'm going to show you how the errors work and some details, some clues that you might get from the framework in order to determine where is the error located, possible reasons, and of course eventually resolve it. So let's just start that. And what I'm going to do is to force an error, let's say for example in our main view. So if you already done the exercise from the previous section, so you already have a controller, of course in app HTTP controllers called main controller. So there you are just for now returning the welcome view. And there we are going to force an error. So a very typical error is for example a zero division. So we are going to say that x is equals to 7 divided by 0. So of course it is going to fail, and we are going to check that of course in our server. So just be sure to execute in your command prompt php artisan serve in case that you don't have it running yet. And of course in our browser we can go to this location and it is going to show you of course an error saying eventually division by 0. Now, this is something, all the interface that you're checking here is reporting the error, and this is thanks to a package that comes now with Laravel called Ignition. Ignition identifies you the error exception, basically the message that you are seeing here, and provides you some possible solutions. Sometimes it is accurate, but sometimes it doesn't. It is the case. This time we don't have a good clue here. It is saying something related with a database, but it is not the case. In fact, we don't have yet configured the database, and that is not the cause of the error. We know because this is the division by 0. But let's imagine that you are not sure where it is located. Well, you have some clues that you can use. Here, in the left, you have the stack. So it is showing you the list of elements that are being executed until you got to the error. And it is saying especially that the error happened exactly on the line 9, you can see here the number, in the location of your project app HTTP controllers main controller. So exactly it is showing you here the error, and you know this is exactly the line that we got here. So you have a very interesting tool to determine where it is happening. But sometimes the error is not so evident. It is not very easy to identify, and let's say that the clues that we have here are not very clear. Let's try to force a different error. So let's remove the division by 0, and let's try, for example, to return a view called test. We know already that this view does not exist, but let's imagine that we don't know the issue here right now. So let's go back, try to refresh, and of course we are going to get a new error saying view test not found. But this time, even when we know that the error is here, it is being reported directly in an internal component of Laravel, which is view finder in the line 137. So of course you know that that is not the solution, that is not the cause. But just there is where the framework realized that this view does not exist at all. It tried to identify this file but failed, of course, so it is throwing the exception. And here is where the error happened. But normally, that is now the origin of the error. So in that cases, it is very important to use the stack that you have on the left, because you know that you should not be changing nothing related with the internal structures of the framework. So you know this function was called by this other function here, which additionally was called by this, and you can check the stack one by one, and finally you got to a structure that it is created or basically modified by you. So there, in the position 44 of the stack, you realize that when you called view test, this called this line to return the factory of views, make sending that view, which then called this function, and etc, etc. And well, you already realized just checking the stack that probably here is where the error is located. If it is not the case, so well, you need to go down and down and down until you find it. But normally, in the first positions, you can determine the cause of the error. So here we know this is the cause, and of course, the name and the description of the error is normally just enough as well. So at this point, you know that on the line 9, again, of your main controller, you have probably using a view that does not exist. It is saying exactly that test is not found in the list of views. So of course, you can resolve that easily. So how is this view being returned to you? Well, there exists something called handler that you have inside your app folder exceptions, and there is the handler.php. There, you have some exceptions that you don't want to report, some elements that you don't want to flash, for example, the password, etc. Don't worry about that. This is basically something that the framework is taking care for you. But there are two interesting methods here, the report and the render. The render is in fact the function from the parent which is creating and rendering this exact view for you with the details that you need. And there is the report method which is reporting the error. And normally, by default, the error is reported in the log of Laravel. And where is located the log? Well, you just need to go to storage, logs, and there is a file called laravel.log. There, you will have the details of all the errors that you might be facing over the development of your project. So, normally you will have a lot of noise here. You have a lot of details. So, what I can recommend first is to check the timestamps. This is probably the first error that we faced during the course. But if we go to the bottom, so you can try to check the timestamp and you can see here the positions on the stack. So you can just go to the position 0, which is of course on the top, and there you have the latest error possible saying exactly the same that we have, that the view test is not found, and it is saying it is located here in the file viewfinder. And there you can just go in the different positions, and finally you realize that this is in the main controller on the index, and of course this is on the line 9. So there you have basically the same details that you have here, but of course here is more visual and you can use it. Normally, you might probably check the log if you are in production, if you don't know so many details about the error, so you have a backup of a way to report and get additional details from the framework here. Again, if you have a lot of information, you can just remove the entire content of this file and you can try to reproduce the error. So let's force this to be test again. And if I refresh in the browser, so we have of course the same error, and you can see now in the Laravel log we have the details only for this specific error as well. So you have different ways now to identify the errors, to locate possibly where is the origin of the error, what are the causes. You have very important descriptions that may give you some clues, and of course this is very important to check the stack with the execution flow and eventually the details that you may have here with the position, which is the line, and of course the file involved in this issue. Now we are going to see in the following class, after leaving our code as it is, to verify different strategies to debug and isolate and identify some errors, let's say using a different approach. So once it is working, we can continue in the following class. See you there.